What a field day for the heat down there. 1,000 people in the street, singing songs and they carrying signs, mostly saying hooray for our side. These battle lines being drawn, nobody's right if everybody wrong. When people speak in their mind, getting so much resistance from behind. We got to stop the children, what's that sound? Everybody look, it's going down.
Hello, everyone. This is Lauren Steiner. Welcome to tonight's edition of The Robust Opposition. You haven't seen me around for a while, except for my show with Daniel Ellsberg 2 weeks ago, because I've been out there covering civil disobedience. And that's going to be the subject of my show tonight. Activists have taken to civil disobedience because nothing else seems to be working. I will talk later at the end of my show about the action that I covered, the Extinction Rebellion folks climbing to the top of the globe at Universal Citywalk and gluing themselves to it. I want to bring in my first guest, who is Kevin Zeese. And Kevin is from popularresistance.org. I've had him on the show several times before. How you doing, Kevin?
Good to see you.
And Kevin has been occupying the Venezuelan embassy in Washington, D.C. to prevent it from being illegally transferred to the opposition. So, Kevin, why don't you tell us about what's been going on at the embassy?
Well, we don't call it occupying because we're here legally. We are here with the permission of the elected Venezuelan government. We were here for the first few weeks. The effort began on April 10th, and initially the government had embassy employees here and diplomats, and we started to stay here with them and got to know the place, and they got to know each other and felt comfortable with each other. And we've stayed and they've left, and we've given us a key, and we've been here as the Embassy Protection Collective. You can find us on Facebook at Embassy Protection Collective, the Facebook page, and that will give you a list of all the things we're doing. But our purpose is to protect the embassy from intrusion by the U.S. government in order to give it over to their puppet government, Juan Guaido, who is a attempted coup that's failed in Venezuela, and they're trying to prop up with this embassy ploy. The idea is to serve as a protectorate. There's also an embassy in Caracas. The U.S. embassy is vacant. The embassy in Venezuelan embassy in D.C. is vacant. And in Caracas, the United States wants Switzerland to serve as a protectorate. They need the Venezuelan government's permission for that. Venezuela is negotiating with governments to have them serve as a protectorate here. And we hope that the U.S. and Venezuela can negotiate an agreement so that there's no incursion into embassies. Under the Vienna Convention of 1961, the host country, in this case the United States, is required to protect the embassy. It's inviolate. That means it cannot be violated. It can't be trespassed. There can be not any unlawful entry. They can't enter without the permission of the Venezuelan government, the elected Venezuelan government. There's only one Venezuelan government. That's the one led by President Nicolas Maduro. So we hope the two countries can negotiate a settlement for both embassies, and that both embassies will be protected. And we're here to serve as interim protectors, the Embassy Protection Collective.
So tell me about some of the activities that you've been having, because I know Medea and other people have been live streaming some of your forums and rallies. Tell us what you've been doing to pass the time.
Yeah, well, we've been doing a lot to pass the time. We're very busy here. Of course, running a collective and a community involves feeding people and keeping the place clean and taking care of the embassy. We see it as a duty to really be responsible for this embassy. So we are keeping it in good shape. We are truly protecting it inside and out. We had an art build early on where we had people come in and join us in creating banners and art displays that we then use to decorate the embassy with. The outside of the embassy is covered with large banners calling for ending the coup, ending the sanctions, no war, and really seeking a peaceful alternative to this threatening situation that the U.S. is creating. We have held nightly forums and cultural events. Forums tonight, for example, we did an event tonight with Pat Elder, who's an activist on the effort to stop the recruitment of youth at high schools. We did an event recently on Julian Assange with Joe Loria, who is the editor of Consortium News. Did an excellent job talking about the Assange case. We did a Black Alliance for Peace, did a night on AFRICOM and how the U.S. has militarized Africa. We had a fantastic night where we talked about the CIA role in regime change with a former CIA agent, John Kiriakou, speaking from the embassy, threatened with coup. He's talking about an insider's view of regime change from a CIA agent. So that was a pretty remarkable thing to be in the Venezuelan embassy talking about how a coup operates from a CIA officer's perspective.
Yeah, I tried to watch that live stream, but the audio kept going in and out. So I was hoping that you guys just simply videotaped it so that you could run a clean version.
I'm not sure. Well, there were multiple live streams of that one, so we have clean versions of that. We had a big audience that night, more than 100 people, and we've done a lot of events that are musical events as well, Latin music. We had a fantastic DC band come in the other night, did some fantastic spoken word. I'm not sure how to describe what it was. It's kind of their own creation of a music form, and we've had artists bringing art in. We've had it's just a variety, and then we also do rallies outside the embassy. We do protests and rallies outside the embassy, visibility to show that there is people here who are protecting the embassy. We have to deal sometimes with opposition people who Washington, D.C. doesn't have a lot of Maduro supporters. Most of the Maduro supporters can't afford to leave Venezuela and come to Washington, D.C. They're back in Venezuela, but former government officials, big business folks, and their families who came to the United States after Chavez was elected and Maduro stayed in power have come to Washington, D.C. We have some opposition people that we deal with. Small number, not a big deal. And we have security outside, security at the door. It's a really carefully run place to really keep this going in a safe way and a responsible way. And we're in contact with the Secret Service. They've come out a few times. I'm the police negotiator, so I meet with them and talk to them, let them know that we're here legally, that we're not trespassing, that we did not unlawfully enter, that we're violating no laws, that we have the permission of the embassy to be here, and explain to them there's no reason to arrest us, that they would, if they came in, they'd be violating the Vienna Convention. They still say they're going to come in, but they haven't given us any date yet. We've saw it several times that there was a date coming, but we have able to get a large crowd out, and I think that large crowd helped to keep people, keep the law enforcement away, and decide not to have that messy event of arresting. We've had up to more than 50 people in the embassy, so sleeping over. We don't call it an occupancy; we call it a live-in. We're living in the embassy. It's a live-in, not a die-in or a sit-in, a live-in, and it's the Embassy Protection Collective living in to protect the embassy.
Okay, so you made a call for people to come from far and wide.
Yeah.
Where is the farthest that someone has come to protect this embassy, and how are people staying? Are they staying the whole time? Are they coming in and out? Do you have a core group that is holding the embassy?
Right. Well, we've had several Californians come, Lauren.
Well,
we've had several Californians who are staying here, and one who's a regular who seems to be planning to stay for the duration, although he has some wedding or something in June. So if we stay that long, he'll probably have to go to that. But there's a core group that stays. We have someone come from Berlin, Germany. That's probably the longest trip. We've had people from Chicago and Boston. So it's a mix, and obviously we come from Baltimore, and so we have a lot of local folks, but also a lot of people from the Philadelphia, tri-state kind of around the DC area, plus as far away as California, Chicago, and Boston.
Now, as far as you know, has this ever happened before in the history of the United States? Somebody trying to hold an embassy for the lawful government from illegal takeover?
I don't think it has. At least I'm not aware of it. I've looked to see if anyone wants to research that and let me know. I've researched it and couldn't find any indication of it happening before. And so I think this is a new issue, but it's a really important issue. And if the Trump administration decides to come in and unlawfully arrest us and unlawfully evict us, it would be a terrible message for U.S. foreign policy to say that no foreign embassy in Washington, D.C. is safe. If you disagree with U.S. and don't allow the U.S. to pick a president for your country, and they can take over your embassy, that is a terrible message for the United States to send. I really hope that there are people in the State Department who are thinking very carefully about whether that's the message they want to set. We really hope that rather than sending that message, they talk to Venezuela and resolve how to solve the U.S. Embassy in Caracas, the Venezuelan Embassy in Washington, D.C., put in protectorates from both other countries, and that begins a process of the two countries talking to each other. There's no reason for the U.S. and Venezuela to be at odds. Venezuela has the most oil, most gold, most diamond reserves in the world, most gas, high levels of mineral deposits that are critical for electronics. They have fresh water. The U.S. needs to stop trying to steal that wealth and trade for it, to enter into negotiations. We hope that the resolution of this embassy dispute will start a process of the two countries talking to each other and finding ways to work together rather than to fight each other.
Okay, now my final question to you is, has the mainstream media covered you at all? Because we know that in this instance, the mainstream corporate media is acting as stenographers for the corporate state once again in disseminating the BS about, Maduro being a brutal dictator and his policies causing the humanitarian crisis and his government firing on the protesters and him being elected illegally, all the stuff we covered in the show.
The USA Today has done a story. There's not been a lot of mainstream media, not a lot of corporate media, but we are getting a lot of media telestores here regularly all the time. Various Russian outlets are here regularly. There are some U.S. outlets, but not a lot. They should be covering this. This is really a historic event that should be covered. But the reason they're not covering it is because when they cover it, they have to answer the questions. Is Maduro a Democratic president? Of course he is. We've published a declaration of this protectorate. If you go to Popular Resistance in the slider, popularresistance.org in the slider, you can read our statement. We lay out how Maduro was legally elected. We lay out how the Vienna Convention protects this embassy and how Guaido was illegally self-chosen. He violated the Venezuelan Constitution in multiple ways. And so that's all clear and should be something that if the corporate media covered this, would have to answer those questions. And
Great.
So we hope Democracy Now! Will cover this. We have here, Amy may come tomorrow, we hear. So if that's the case, that'd be great. But we really need to see much more media coverage of this really historic event. If people want to get involved, come. If you can't come, donate, popularresistance.org. We need to feed 30 to 50 people a day. So we need resources to do that. Venezuela's not paying for this. We're all raising the money for this. So we need people in the United States who support our effort to give donations and help make it happen.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us, Kevin. And I will be, if you're still there at the end of May, when I'm done with my 40th reunion in Connecticut, I will come by.
That sounds great. Hope it works out.
But now I'm going to go to my next guest, who was occupying the governor's office, Governor Gavin Newsom, in fact, slept over there. And her name is Yesenia Miranda Meza. How you doing, Yesenia?
I'm good. How are you, Lauren?
I'm good. The last time I saw you was in the governor's office making your plea to some of his staffers, including his chief of staff, Ann O'Leary, who's a very important person. Why don't you tell the viewers how you came to be spending the night in the governor's office?
Well, to tell you the truth, Lauren, I've been in this battle since last year when the repeal of Costa-Hawkins had came by as an AB Bill 1406, which was turned down by Ed Chow. And again, there's another bill coming up tomorrow that is really, really important, which is AB 1481, which is just cause evictions, that is going to go up to committee as well. And we are so scared that he is going to shut it down. So again, he abstained last year from Costa-Hawkins. And, right now it's really important that people understand that they need to make phone calls to Ed Chow's office in order to help us defeat him with him abstaining and on this important matter. But I bring that up because through this process and through this battle from Proposition 10 to now having a package deal, which is AB 36, AB 1481, and AB 1482. 1481 and AB 436 were going up last week on to committee on Thursday. So when I got there on Wednesday, our plan was to just lobby, but the thing was that all of the committee members that were going to vote on this locked all the doors, so we were not able to access them. So as a last-ditch effort, we said, you know what, let's try to get into the governor's office. So we went ahead and little by little we trickled in. Fortunately, CHP was busy with other members and we were able to get in. We did just occupy the office, and after that we protested very peacefully with songs of our leaders, Cesar Chavez, Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King. We sat there in total harmony and in peace. And they saw that. They saw that all we want is stability in our housing. So when they saw that we were not being aggressive, we were not being rude, we were just trying to get our point across, they ended up getting Daniel. I can't remember his last name right now, but Daniel ended up coming out and speaking to us, and we still refused to leave. So after that, Priscilla came out, and we refused to leave. So then they ended up getting the chief involved. And when she came out, some of the things that they were saying, that they supported, that Gavin Newsom was going to support a package deal. We were trying to make it very clear that, look, your assembly members are not trying to commit to saying yes, that they're going to support this bill. That's why we're here, because you can actually, push them along to try to enforce that you are for these bills and how important they are in our community. If they're very important right now, it's affecting 17 million renters and tenants. So that's why myself and Marie Sanchez decided Marie Sanchez was my partner that stayed with me, and she's facing first stages of pancreatic cancer. And we have nothing to lose now. We're a rent increase away from getting evicted and becoming homeless. I'm a single mother of 3 children. I have 2 jobs to try to sustain my apartment. So, and it's even harder for her. She's sleeping on a floor somewhere in San Diego because she can't afford rent. And it's just to the point where we collectively decided, you know what, we're not moving. We're going to stay here. And tomorrow morning, we're going to go and lobby for the bill. We're going to go to the committee meeting and we're going to make our voices known. And that's what got me to stay at the governor's office, because technically I have nothing to lose because I'm a rent increase away from being homeless.
Yeah, your stories were all very moving. Tuesday, I guess, I was watching and I saw them live in Jesse Gabriel's office. And it had said Brian Masonshine, but apparently Brian Masonshine, who is also on the housing committee, was one of the ones who locked the folks out.
He actually slammed the door on Marie's face. Their staff slammed the door on her face when the door says come in. Like, you can come into our office, yet you slam the door and you lock it. Like, that was just uncalled for. And that's why we took the measures that we did. And apparently it worked, because it is getting media attention. And we do need this media attention for these bills right now.
Yeah, well, I saw you guys in Jesse Gabriel's office. And then I saw Richard Bloom come in. And he's the author of AB 36. And he came in, and I thought his attitude, while he was very respectful and polite to you guys, I thought his attitude was so defeatist, because he was basically saying, the bill is dead for the year. I don't think this is a good tactic, what you're doing. Sometimes I get a feeling that they put forward these bills to make themselves look good, and then they don't fight for them.
I don't think that was the case. I think it was his last attempt to keep the bill alive instead of just completely them voting, not voting for it and it dying there right then and there. Right now, AB 36 went into rules. So at least it has some type of chance. I mean, that's where bills go to die, right? Yeah. But I mean, if we advocate for it, and I think that there's still a chance if we do our work as organizers, that there will still be a chance. And I think that's what he was trying to do. He was trying to salvage it instead of letting it completely die.
Right. So now then the next day, I saw you guys in the governor's office, and I watched Ann O'Leary, who's a very, very powerful person. And I'm kind of mad at her right now because she put together a charter school commission, a private commission that's meeting to advise the governor on charter schools. And it's stacked with charter school representatives. It makes me a little skeptical of her. And she was sitting there and being very polite and talking about her own personal circumstances, to show that she empathized with you. And she even said, the governor has said to the legislature that I want you to pass out a package of rent control bills and put it on my desk to sign. And then when you said, well, how is he doing that? And she said, well, he talked to the committee, he talked to the authors, and you guys said, but the authors are already the champions. He should be talking to the people of the housing committee. So then she said, this is the thing that really got me. She said, well, he talks to every member of the legislature when he made his State of the State speech. And no, that's not what you do. That's not what LBJ did when he was Master of the Senate. That's not what Jerry Brown did when he was the governor. It's called behind the scenes arms, right?
Right. And Amy, one of our organizers, was the one that was saying that. And it was true, we were trying to let them know. We were trying to let Ann know, these people are already on board. We're telling you to have an effect on the people that are closing their doors on us. We're not asking you to have an effect on the people that are authors of these bills, And so, I mean, I think we really made a statement when we decided not to leave. And, Ann was making she made a statement. I shouldn't be laughing, but she was in crutches, and luckily she came out at least to acknowledge that we were there. We do thank her for that. But yet, I'm there with 2 broken legs. I had an accident last year. I have 3 titanium plates and 16 screws on my right leg, 2 titanium plates and 8 screws on my left leg. And I'm there, letting them know, yes, I understand that you're hurting, but I've been here all day as well, and I'm hurting too. And these voices of the 17 million renters need to be heard. Basically, I feel sorry for you, but this is what needs to be done. And they even try to convince us to leave the office at 10 p.m. They're like, your voices were heard. You did what you needed to. You guys can go ahead and leave and sleep comfortable in your in your hotel rooms. We're like, no, thank you. We're staying. Regardless of what you say, we're going to stay here, and we're going to see this through, just so you could see the severity of it, just so you could see the necessity of it, and do something about it. We need you guys to do something about it. Fortunately, 1482 did pass one of the committees for a 6-1 vote. But now, like I said, I need to make it very clear that AB 1481, just cause evictions, is going up tomorrow to committee. So if you guys can please call Ed Chow, blow up his office, call him, make it be known that we are aware of this. If you guys really truly want to help in some way, shape, or form, it's to call his office tomorrow and let them know that you're in support of 1481 and the importance of it. Because if all we have is 1482, that's not a package deal. It's not going to back up AB 36 when we try to pull it out of rules. However way we're going to do it, it's going to some way somehow be done, because we're not just going to leave with our arms crossed or give up,
But why don't you just briefly tell us what the 3 bills are and what each one of them does?
Okay, so AB 36 is a reform to Costa-Hawkins. It's like a sister to Proposition 10, where it's going to reform what is Costa-Hawkins, which is preventing cities to implement full rent control. The next one is 1481, which is just cause evictions. And then 1482, which is rent gouging. That's the one that's going, that went up for committee and passed, but it still has a few more steps before it gets to the governor's office. So the one that we really are focusing on right now, it's the 1481, the just cause evictions, which is going up to committee tomorrow. So that's the one that's important, right? I can't be in Sacramento every single week. I have children to take care of. I wish I could be there. If I could fly out there, I'd be there right now.
So can I assume that the other ones on the committee whose names we're not calling are in support, and these are just the ones that are either negative or on the fence?
Yes, these are like possible abstains or possible like no's. So these are the ones that we need to focus on in order to get them to to get on board.
And just so people understand, when a legislature abstains or doesn't vote on a bill, it is the same as voting no. They just don't want to have that no vote on their record so it can be used against them. But if anybody understands how the legislature works, if you don't vote yes on something, it might as well be a no, because we need a certain number of yeses for it to pass the committee. We don't have time to do a full show on these bills and the reason for them, but I think everybody that was supporting Prop 10, the repeal of Costa-Hawkins, understands the need to have a package of bills for renters, because renters are like 40% of California residents?
Yes, ma'am.
17 million people are affected by this. And
actually, Lauren, it's a little more than 17 million, simply because there are 18-year-olds that are going to be leaving their parents' homes, and they're going to see what it's like to rent a place. And they're just going to be stuffed like a sardine in somebody's room, where they have to both share a room in order and still pay $600 a month for a half of a room. Yeah. So people need to understand this. It's not just the renters, but these potential 18-year-olds that have the ability to vote, that are going to be going out into the world and seeing. A lot of people still live with their families because they can't afford rent. They live with their mom and dad at 30 years old, and this is a factual statement. So please go out there and do something about this. It is an urgency. It is now a crisis in the state of California. If we don't stand together and do something now, this is completely going to get out of control.
You have community college students that are sleeping in their cars.
Yes, we do.
Putting forward a bill right now, I think, to get community colleges to open up their parking lots to their students so they can sleep in their cars in a safer environment. I mean, it's just crazy. Anyway, that's about all the time that we have, Yesenia. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Lauren. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Okay, take care. Now I'm going to have for my next guest, Trinity Tran, who has a much more successful story to tell because, hi, Trinity.
Hi, Lauren. How are you?
I'm great. You have a much more successful story to tell because your bills passed right out of their first two committees. And maybe if Yesenia is still watching, you could share with her as well as the audience some of the tactics that you used, because I was up there just 2 weeks prior to watch you guys do your really organized citizen lobby meetings. Tell us about the public banking bill and what it does, and then tell us about the effort to lobby for it.
So AB 857 creates a framework for local governments to be able to apply for a charter for a public bank that would be overseen by the Department of Business Oversight. So currently in California, across the country, we do not have public banking options, and the only existing state with public bank is the Bank of North Dakota. So in California, local governments are realizing, why are we keeping our money in these out-of-state private commercial banks where billions of our tax dollars don't accrue any interest, and these big banks use our money to finance harmful, destructive industries. So in Los Angeles, we pay $170 million in fees to big banks, another $1.1 billion in interest. And that money is not currently serving Los Angeles. So cities across the state of California are realizing that this is a step towards common sense financial independence. So the California Public Banking Alliance started forming about a year ago. So as we were pushing forward for public banking here in Los Angeles, we realized we weren't alone. So we created an alliance with cities across the state, from Los Angeles to San Francisco, Santa Rosa, Santa Barbara, Oakland, Silicon Valley, Santa Cruz, and then Orange County and San Diego joined on board. So all of these cities are coming together to say, we want local control of our public dollars so that we can recirculate that money back into our local communities to serve our people. So after Measure B, with, even though we didn't win, we had 4 months to organize a city ballot measure.
Tell Measure B. Measure B was?
Measure B was a bill. It was a ballot measure for the city of Los Angeles to take the first steps to create a public bank. What it would do was amend a section in the city charter to allow the city to create a public bank. So unfortunately, it didn't win, but we had 4 months to organize a citywide ballot measure campaign on a shoestring budget. And in just 4 months, we were able to get 430,000 people to say yes. And that was an incredible feat. And we knew out of the momentum of Measure B, we had to push forward mobilize the alliance and all of the cities across California to introduce a state bill. And so that is how AB 857 came on board. We were so grateful to have Assemblymember David Chu and Assemblymember Miguel Santiago as our joint authors. And for the last few months, we have been organizing nearly every day with our alliance members, which is an entirely volunteer coalition. All volunteers up and down the state of California, from our legislative team of lawyers, all volunteers. And so when our bill got introduced, we knew we had to move quickly to make sure that this gets passed through the committees. We were up against all odds, knowing that the banks would throw everything they had, to kill this bill in committee. So we knew going in, we had to not only strategize on how to put direct pressure to get these through both the Assembly Banking and Finance Committee and Assembly Local Government Committee, but also build a coalition that would be strong enough to really move these politicians where we need them to move. So when you saw us in Sacramento, that was just a few weeks ago, that was the day after we had an 8-hour-long strategy session with about 30 alliance members. We were in a conference room for 8 hours straight, power mapping and talking about our lobbying talking points and figuring out our strategy and our schedule. On our lobby day, we ended up hitting 21 offices, plus another 20 drop-ins between the Assembly Local Government, Appropriations, and Banking and Finance, even hitting senators' offices across the board. We went hard and strong, and we had a very talented team who was able to really sit down and communicate to these legislators. And, on top of that, we built a pretty formidable coalition with now the California Labor Federation signing on, SEIU California signing on, California Nurses Association has signed on, the Democratic Party of Los Angeles, the DIPSIV. We have now over 90 organizations representing 3 million people across the state of California, on top of cities who have now endorsed AB 857. So utilizing our alliance network across the state, we got the city of Los Angeles to endorse AB 857. We got the city and county of San Francisco endorsing AB 857, the city of Oakland, city of San Jose introduced a memo to endorse, the city of Berkeley, Alameda, the county of Santa Clarita Santa Clara is on its way, as well as San Diego. So you're seeing this unprecedented support from the grassroots to the halls of legislation, from elected officials to local governments, of California creating this this taking a collective stand against the big banks. And now it's incredible to see this unfolding in real time, because it's, this is Occupy evolved.
Yeah.
It's not just antagonism or aggression against the big banks. It's really being technical about it. Our legislative team had to amend existing financial codes and write laws to be able to allow cities to be able to leverage their deposits, to be able to lend out and to invest, and to partner with local community banks and credit unions. So it's a very complex technical process. So we had our legislative team working on that aspect, while our lobby and outreach team really got into these offices and built relationships and networked with labor and environmental groups and social justice groups, and across the board. It's such a beautiful broad-based coalition. And
yeah. Now let me ask you, what were the most frequently asked questions or objections voiced by the legislators?
Well, Wall Street lobbyists came in and said, well, this is going to be insolvent. This is going to put cities and counties at risk to be insolvent. This is going to, the banks are going to be, they're going to be subject to the corruption of politicians. The same sort of fear mongering that we saw with Measure B. Looking at the Bank of North Dakota as not a model to emulate, but as something that's, obscure and esoteric, when in fact the BND is the most solvent, bank in the BND has made the state of North Dakota the most solvent state in the United States, with a return on investment of 17%. That's returned, in the last 20 years, it's returned over $460 million back to the state general fund. As far as the banks becoming insolvent, the public banks are going to have more oversight than private commercial banks, because it's going to be overseen by the GBO, who has to approve a business plan, who has to approve the governance plan. Because these are public banks and public entities, it's subject to the state sunshine laws, which means meetings and votes are accessible to the public. So at the end of the day, this is going to be more transparent than our banks. Our bankers are going to be public servants.
Now that the banks are some of the most well-funded, powerful corporations in the country, and we have Wells Fargo headquartered right here in San Francisco. Now their latest CEO resigned. I've been here now in the last couple of years. Two of their CEOs have resigned because of all the trouble that they've gotten themselves into. So they're almost like a good villain, sort of like PG&E, because of the wildfires. So I feel like if we don't take our opportunity to get public power now in California, to get rid of these investor-owned utilities that basically, to save money for their shareholders, are not trimming the trees and therefore leading to the fires, et cetera, et cetera. If we don't take this opportunity, like you've taken the opportunity of Wells Fargo's, numerous egregious violations, it may be a lost opportunity. It's kind of like Naomi Klein's shock doctrine in reverse. Normally, shock doctrine is a horrible thing happens, like Hurricane Katrina, and the privatizers use it to come over and take over all the public schools. There's like no public schools left in New Orleans anymore. So this is kind of reverse shock doctrine. The public, the good guys, are coming in, taking a horrible situation with a bad bank like Wells Fargo and trying to, push them out and get public banking. We need to overcome basically 4 decades of neoliberalism, which is the privatization of everything. The idea that private corporations can do things better than the government. Tell us the next steps for this bill.
So this past week, it passed the Assembly Banking and Finance, Assembly Local Government. So the next step is appropriations, and we feel positive about it. We've been talking to a lot of legislators with, as you said, with the momentum that's happening around the country, from not only from 2008 onwards, but just every day you're hearing about another Wells Fargo scandal or Jamie Dimon testifying. And, it's the revolutions are about timing. And this really is the moment to strike as the veil is being lifted from the big banks. We really don't have to communicate why banks are bad. People intuitively know that. It's just now about communicating the solution and what a public bank is. And within this past year building Measure B, we've really helped build the narrative and get the conversation out there. So it's now become a national conversation, and it's not just California pushing for this. It's California and New Jersey, Michigan, New York City. So cities across this country are pushing for the solution. And, it really is a rare opportunity for the public sector to cut costs while simultaneously providing social benefits. So it's like, it's a common sense solution. So we're super excited about the next steps. It's going to go to appropriations, and then when it makes it out of appropriations, it will go to the Assembly floor for a vote on the last week of May. So, if anyone who's watching who wants to be part of this very historic fight, this is California versus Wall Street. This is California, the 5th largest economy in the world, versus Wall Street. This is the biggest beast that we can slay, and this is the moment in history to do this. It's also the Bank of North Dakota's 100-year anniversary. This is BND's centennial, so it makes it even more of a symbolic year for us to do this. So if you're listening, go to bit.ly/publicbanks, bit.ly/publicbanks. There, it's an Action Network letter that you can send a letter to your representative. But even more so, call. They need to hear from their constituents. So call your legislators and tell them you support AB 857, because it's time to empower California cities and counties to take our money back from Wall Street and empower Main Street.
Absolutely. And this would be quite the victory because I was involved with Occupy LA, as you know, back in 2011. And if this happens in 8 years, that'll be pretty amazing, because this is one of the things we called for. Ellen Brown was at our teach-in talking about public banks, and she is the mother of the public banking movement in this country. And all I can say is you've done a great job, Trinity, and thank you so much for being on my show tonight.
Lauren, thank you for the support.
So I was hoping to have someone from Extinction Rebellion on my show, because I don't know if you guys saw my 3 live streams that I did last week from Universal Citywalk, where the first live stream we had a fun game distracting the cops, basically marching back and forth around the metro station at Universal Citywalk, where we had advertised that we were going to meet up. So there were all the cops watching us there and making sure we didn't do anything out of hand. And we were going up the stairs to the bridge and hanging the banner and chanting, and then going downstairs and swarming, meaning handing flyers to cars. And all the while, the guys were setting up for their action, which was up in the main part of Universal Citywalk, where 2 gentlemen scaled the globe and superglued themselves to the top of the globe while they were shouting demands and flying a flag. And one gentleman did it at the base. The private security there has the ability to make a citizen's arrest and detain you while they call the sheriff's department, which they then did. And they took this guy off in handcuffs. And then they actually arrested someone who was not intending to be arrested for civil disobedience. This person was merely passing out leaflets with the demands. And that person was also arrested. And they tried to arrest me and the legal observer for the National Lawyers Guild. And I decided, okay, I've already spent 10 hours in jail up in Sacramento for the principle of my First Amendment right to live stream protest. So I didn't want to get arrested again. What I did was I snuck around the back and pretended to enter the park, where I got a very good angle, because by that point, they had gotten the fire department involved, and the fire department pulled their truck and ladder right up to the globe and proceeded to climb the ladder and get from the ladder to the globe, where they arrested these last 2 individuals. And then they took all 4 of them to the West Hollywood Sheriff's Station, where we went to provide jail support. And we actually found out that they charged all 4 of these individuals with felony vandalism. Even the person who was just handing out the leaflets, felony vandalism, $20,000 bail. And the people were bailed out the next morning. Now, where this is going to stand, I don't know, because there was a lot of hanky-panky going on. I feel like a lot of our rights were being violated. Anyway, as Chris Hedges said, it only takes 2 to 3% of the population to do nonviolent civil disobedience to make a difference. And I feel that that's what it is going to have to come to, because Trinity's success aside with the public banking, and we'll see. I mean, we haven't gone completely down the field yet. We don't know what's going to happen with this bill. We don't know if we're going to get public banks. But right now it's looking pretty good. But that success aside, we see what's happening with affordable housing. We have a major bill that we have to kill, which is SB 50. And on my next show, I'm going to have Jill Stewart from the Coalition to Preserve LA, who's going to be talking about that bill. That just passed out of one of the important committees. And the only person who was speaking against it was Senator Bob Hertzberg, who said this is crazy. They're basically trying to change zoning law in all of California to get rid of single-family homes, yet they've exempted several small affluent neighborhoods in Scott Wiener's neck of the woods up there in Northern California. Isn't it funny how that works? And this bill is worse than the bill that we stopped last year, AB 827. So on my next show, I'm going to be talking to Jill about this, and hopefully I can get Bob Hertzberg on, and even Zev Yaroslavsky, who for many years sat on the Board of Supervisors, and he just spoke at a forum about why this bill is really horrific. It's just outlandish. But until then, until you next see me, if you are new to my show, you can follow me here on Facebook. And you can also follow me on Twitter, Lauren_Steiner. Until I see you tomorrow and Thursday, keep fighting.